That's just some redneck.
What the hell is this guy's problem?
Stop! Are you crazy? Why did you do that?
Was it an accident, Andrew? Andrew?
Josh, first of all, I really enjoyed this movie. I just had a chance to finally see it yesterday, and I came out, and I'll admit up front, I was a little cynical or a little skeptical going into it.
As you should be, yes.
And, I came out really, really having had a good time in the theater. Tell me, first of all, let's start with the very basics. Yeah. Where does Chronicle come from?
Chronicle comes from a camera. I've always wanted to make movies my whole life. I was raised in a real cinephile kind of a family. My dad makes documentaries, and creatively my outlet has always been to borrow cameras from people and use them longer than they would let me, and shoot experimental little kind of documentary-like scenarios where I would merge fantasy with real life. And for a long time, since I graduated high school, all I've done is worked in the industry in various capacities, a lot in post-production, and in the meantime, trying to spec my first, a screenplay to direct, and shooting a lot of these videos. I just kept shooting these sorts of weird videos, and YouTube came around, and I put this one of them online, and it kind of became a bit of a viral hit called "Stabbing at Leia's 22nd Birthday Party," and I realized there was something there, kind of zeitgeisty and cool, that people were responding to. So I pulled out my laundry list of all of my ideas, and a lot of them involved kids with telekinesis demonstrating their talents in public. And looking at it, I realized that this basically was the beginning of the second act of a screenplay, of a story, where you would have kids who, normal, average, everyday kids, a group of friends who are messing with people, because that's what kids would do if they had telekinesis. They wouldn't go out and fight crime. And eventually somebody would go too far, and the consequences would be huge, because these kids have godlike powers. So I developed a lot of this story and thought it would be really cool and interesting and different, even though, there's the trend of found footage in 2012, 2011, we're seeing so many of these things. But to do a film that is kind of in this aesthetic, but is actually at its core a coming-of-age tale, a drama with a classical three-act structure, and the idea of employing telekinesis as a part of the camera work in the film, that is essentially being shot by a kid who has a visual point of view and a talented skill behind the camera, that could work as a movie. And while I was developing this, I ran into somebody who I knew briefly in high school, Max Landis, who's a brilliant young screenwriter. I was a fan of some stuff that he had written, and he was a fan of some stuff of mine, and we were talking about ideas we were working on in our own world. And I told him about Chronicle, and he stopped me in the middle of it and said he wanted to write it, and he wrote this great screenplay, and it kind of took off from there.
Now, you mentioned the pattern of found footage movies, and I got to admit, that was one of the reasons for my, being a little bit skeptical going in. I found one of the weaknesses of a lot of these found footage films is that the performances really have to make you believe what you're looking at is real life, and they often fall flat. But you had Dane, Alex, and Michael, who made this film so believable that it just seemed to make the found footage-ness of the film, if I can put it that way, kind of just fade away, and you really bought into these. What made these guys, Dane, Alex, and Michael, the right guys for Chronicle?
After Max wrote the script, his agents and my agents were kind of like, you have a great script here, but if you actually are serious about going into a studio and saying you want to direct it, write a statement. So I wrote a statement, and in it I said very early in the beginning of it, pretty much, that one of the most important things that we would need going forward in a film like this are powerful, powerful actors. To get actors who embody both a rawness and a reality, and a familiarity or relatability, but at the same time, actors who harness a great talent over their craft. So they could act in scenarios that are heavily scripted, but play them off with this looseness and spontaneity as if it is real life. And we were big fans of Dane DeHaan's work on In Treatment on HBO. He is so amazing and so deep, and just has this complexity in his eyes. Like, you could just see it. It just, like, pops out of the screen. So we put the script out to him. He loved it. We were so lucky to get him. He set the bar for everybody else we auditioned. Eventually, we narrowed it down to 15 actors, which included Michael B. Jordan and Alex Russell. I was a huge fan of Michael B. Jordan's work on The Wire and Friday Night Lights and Parenthood. He's amazing. He embodies the character Steve, the nicest, most charismatic guy in school. Alex Russell, again, just embodied the character of Matt. And they were able to bring to the table an interpretation of these characters that stepped outside of the typical archetype or stereotype of what we see in most films about teenagers, where you have to kind of put them in a category. They really felt like real kids that we can identify with.